Alright, YouTube, there are a couple of links in the description. The first is to a video of amateur raw footage taken in Israel. In Gaza, of an Israeli strike on some seemingly ambulances that were trying to evacuate the wounded. And apparently several people died in that attack, and then they pan out to an open-air market that was hit earlier than that, actually. In which 15 people, I believe, died, including a Western journalist, or it wouldn't even be newsworthy because no one cares about Palestine here in the West. For some strange reason, we still support Israel. The second video is to a UN human rights observer. Now, it takes a lot to rattle UN members. They're weak, ineffectual, politically correct, and they don't like showing emotion. They don't like taking sides. They'll go into a third world area, build a couple schools, shake hands with a few people, and then vaguely condemn anyone that fucks with them. They might as well not even arm their forces because they're so ineffectual. And this UN human rights observer broke down in tears live on air because he saw some of the shit that was going on in Gaza. Right now, we've got thousands of people dead in Gaza. I would hazard a guess and say the death toll is far higher than what is being reported in the Western media. Watching the live feeds for over a week now, I have to assume the death toll is far higher. Israeli strikes can't possibly be so precise as to not kill far more people than they claim are being killed. And it's atrocious. It's reprehensible. What is going on right now in Gaza amounts to war crimes. And I believe, and actually let me Google this shit and see if I can find a link for you on this. War crimes, Gaza. Yeah. Let's see. Attack on UN school in Gaza, potential war crimes, Amnesty International. Yeah, I'll put that in the description too. You can fucking read that. No shit that war crimes are being committed. You've got schools being attacked. You've got hospitals being attacked. They're attacking power stations. They're attacking civilian infrastructure. You don't do this in war. You're not supposed to if you're a so-called civilized nation. These are the sort of things that terrorists attack. We always hear in the Western media, these groups, these militants and these little tin horn dictators, they'll attack a school or a hospital or something and we label them terrorists. So why are we not admitting the fact that the IDF right now is at least acting like the same terrorists that we've been lambasting since 2001, and in many cases before that? Now Israel is saying anti-Semitism is on the rise. Jews are in fear as synagogues are attacked. Effigies are burned and shoes are thrown at Jewish individuals. Well, no shit, anti-Semitism is on the rise. I wonder why that could possibly be when you have, thousands of people having their children, their limbs blown off and they die in the streets. I wonder why that could possibly spawn any anti-Semitism at all. No, they're just wonderful people over there in Israel. I wonder why anti-Semitism on the rise. Could it be because UN schools are being bombed? No, that's not enough. People don't give a shit about that. What about hospitals, full of sick people? No. Nobody cares about the hospitals. They're Muslims, so they don't matter. Can't think of a valid reason. Could it be the fact that mostly civilians are dying? No, because they've always been largely civilians that have been slaughtered in Palestine. Why would anti-Semitism be on the rise? Could it be the fact that Israel is lying about its very basis for attacking Gaza and that it wasn't Hamas that kidnapped the Israeli teenagers and that it was actually a rogue Islamic sect in the Gaza Strip that did that and maybe even operating out of Israel? No, nobody cares about that because the mainstream media won't report it, so most people over 30 don't even know that fact. In fact, most people under 30 don't know about that fact. What could it be? Could it be that they're destroying power stations and then depriving people of electricity in an area that's essentially desert? No. They don't need air conditioning. They're Muslims. They've got dark skin. They'll be fine. Let's see. Could it be the fact that Israeli defense forces and their online constituents in Hasbara and the JIDF go around and troll people on a 24/7 basis with billions of dollars in funding, and that Israel actually pays people to call other people Nazis for criticizing Israel? No, it couldn't be that either. I can't think of a reason why anti-Semitism would be on the rise. Oh, I've got it. Could it be the fact that when the attacks started in the Gaza Strip, a bunch of Israelis got together with popcorn and lawn chairs and sat on the border watching the explosions and tweeting about dead Palestinian children and how, no, they won't reproduce and become terrorists anymore. No, who gives a fuck? They're Palestinians. They're not Jews, so nobody cares. It's sick. It's sickening, and the Western media is largely responsible for the fact that here in the United States, the majority of the population still supports Israel. Who's killing most of the people in this conflict? Who's killing most of the civilians? Who's bombing schools and hospitals? It's not Hamas. Hamas is supposedly a horrible terrorist group that wants to destroy the nation of Israel off the face of the earth. And guess what? They're firing far fewer rockets. The rockets are doing far less damage. Half of them are just hitting out in open fields or being taken down by Iron Dome. Even if Iron Dome didn't exist, it wouldn't even matter. Most of these rockets lack a warhead. They're like an Estes rocket that you would fire up in the air. They're a hollow metal shaft without a warhead with a little bit of propellant in the back. They're not capable of damaging anything, really. Oh, well, 2 Israeli civilians are dead. Well, guess what? 2,000 Gazans are dead, but you don't hear about that much on the news. It's gotten to the point where even Ban Ki-moon now tweeted out condemnation of the UN school being attacked. The United States government will say absolutely nothing. The Republicans are completely in bed with Zionism. They support Israel 100%. The Democratic Party may not ideologically support Zionism, but guess what? They're still funded by Zionist bankers, so they won't say anything either. There is one political party in the whole United States that's willing to condemn Israel, and that's the Libertarian Party. Thank goodness I'm a fucking libertarian. Got fucking seeds or cat hairs. I'm shit in my mouth. I've been watching the live streams. I get to hear the screams. I get to hear the explosions. I get to see them live as they die. I get to see videos on YouTube of Palestinian children with a leg blown off. You know, sitting there writhing in agony, not even able to scream because, you know, half the time their vocal cords have been severed too. You know, shooting blood out of their lungs. I get to see old women screaming because, oh, their daughter's dead, their son's dead, their husband is dead, you're a widow, and you don't have a house because the IDF just blew it up. What would you do if tomorrow somebody leafleted your house and said, leave your house, we're going to bomb it? What the fuck would you do? Of course you would join a group dedicated to fighting such barbarians. I do not blame the Palestinian people now for supporting them. For years I said, okay, what the Israelis do in Gaza and the West Bank isn't great, but Hamas are still terrorists, and I can sort of understand where the Israeli government's coming from. Because, I mean, they're terrorists, they're killing civilians and so forth. I quickly, in this last attack, have realized that's not actually the case. I don't even know anymore why Hamas is even labeled a terrorist group, because their actions are mild compared to what the IDF is doing, and the death toll far lower as the result of their actions. I no longer really can find a philosophical reason to blame the Palestinians for joining and supporting Hamas. I don't want to support Hamas. I don't want to appear anti-Semitic, but I'm finding myself at difficulty finding an ideological reason to disagree with their methods. It's sad, because I dislike Islam. I'm anti-Islamic. I shit on the Quran. I completely detest Islam and all that it stands for and blaspheme Allah on a regular and, in fact, daily basis. Hanik Rabak and Sharmota Allah up Allah's ass. Muhammad had shoes on his face and all that sort of stuff. I detest Islam, and yet I'm finding myself at a loss to find more than a handful of reasons to condemn Hamas, but I'm finding myself finding a heap of reasons to condemn what the IDF is doing. I think that the UN, with this observer breaking down in Ban Ki-moon's statement, I think finally might realize that Israel has become completely unhinged. And the reason why is that Israel does not want a partition. They do not want peace. They don't want a two-state solution. In fact, they've openly been hostile towards and resisted calls by the U.S. government to broker some sort of ceasefire arrangement. And guess what? The Western media keeps saying Hamas refuses ceasefire. Hamas refuses ceasefire. Palestine refuses ceasefire. Abbas refuses ceasefire. What about all the times that Israel has refused to ceasefire and told Kerry to fuck himself? And told Obama, get out of here, you're fucking things up? What about them telling the UN when it found that there were possible war crimes in motion as we speak, to tell them to basically shut up? Who's reporting it? Where's the accountability for the Israeli government? We're all holding the Palestinians accountable, including the dead children and civilians, for, well, the civilians are still responsible because they support Hamas. Even if they don't take up arms. Well, they still support Hamas. Well, guess what? If you're supporting the IDF, if you're supporting the Israeli government right now, you're complicit in those deaths as well. You're a terrorist. Well, I mean, how can you not say they're terrorists? The people in Gaza must be terrified. Ambulances are getting bombed. Hospitals, there might not even be any hospitals left for them to bomb anymore. They've already destroyed so many of them. They said, oh, well, we found rockets in this school. Well, what about all the other schools that you bombed? Did you find any rockets in there? Where are the rockets? I'm not seeing any. I see a few pictures of Hamas rockets. There's empty fucking hollow shafts. They slam into the pavement. They make a little smear, a little burn mark, and they essentially fragment and fall apart. Then you see Israel capable of leveling an entire city block with one missile. I think there's a little disparity here going on between the relative firepower of the two sides. And now the Israelis say, we need more mortar rounds. U.S., please help us. We're running out of ammunition. And the government says, okay, you can have some more ammo. Guess what that ammo is going to do? It's going to kill children. It's going to kill pregnant women and the crippled and the sick. It's not killing Hamas targets. Other than removing some tunnels, it's not going to affect Hamas at all. Israel has already done this before. Israel's already occupied the Gaza Strip before. Israel's already bombed the Gaza Strip before. What did it do? Hamas is still there. The only people that suffer are all the refugees, the Palestinian civilians. Why do you think there are so many Palestinian refugees in Jordan? Why did they flee? Why did they leave their country? They must not have any pride in their people or whatever. No, they're terrified. What would you do if your house was destroyed? If you knew you were powerless to stop your home from getting destroyed, your child from getting their legs ripped off by a bomb, and all of this other stuff, you didn't have any hospitals, there was no school, half the people in the Gaza Strip were unemployed, almost as many in the West Bank, what would you do? What would you do if someone moved in next door? And they occupied half of your property. They built a fence across it. You go out one day and you say, why is this fence here? That's my property. Get your fence off. The other person, who by the way is wearing a yarmulke, says, oy vey, no, it's God's chosen land. It's no longer yours. It's ours. Then you say, well, fuck your fence, and you start tearing it down. They start taking pot shots at you. What would you do? Or they put a bomb in your mailbox and your kid gets blown up by it. What would you do? Can you blame the Palestinians for fighting back through any means necessary against a group that is internationally recognized as illegally settling and occupying the West Bank and enforcing an illegal blockade on the Gaza Strip, which is preventing Gaza from developing beyond the Stone Age? What would you do? And don't play into all the anti-Semitism bullshit. Anti-Semitism on the rise. Well, no shit. People are anti-Israel. They're not anti-Jew. I don't care about the Jews that go to the synagogue down the street. I don't give a fuck. I don't care about that. They're not in the IDF. They're not launching missiles at anybody. Let them be. But what about the IDF forces? They're bombing little children. And there were some anecdotal reports that some IDF soldiers put up saying that once they saw the dead and people staring at them in fear, that they finally realized what they were doing is wrong. I wish more people in the IDF realized that and revolted and overthrew their government in a coup and installed a government that actually respected the Palestinians. That's the only way this is going to end. The Palestinians do not care if the Jews have a homeland. The idea that the average Palestinian hates Jews is completely wrong. There are actually Jews in Palestine that are helping protest and helping fight, sometimes even as members of Hamas. It's a total humanitarian crisis. It's genocide. What is going on right now in Gaza has progressed from apartheid to genocide. It's no different than the Warsaw ghettos. Netanyahu is Hitler 2.0. The IDF is like the SS. There is no difference anymore. What has been going on is completely wrong. It's completely reprehensible. It should be condemned by every person who has a working brain. And those of us who are, I think, about under 30 or 35, who get our news from online, probably have a bigger picture of what's actually going on over there than people who just watch TV news and sit there, fuck, I'm retarded. I'll eat up whatever Fox News says, whatever MSNBC says. I'm a good sheep and a good goyim. No. What they're reporting is not accurate. They sit there and their eyes glaze over like the true sheep that they are and say, I'll support Israel, I'll send a food box. Well, maybe those Israeli civilians that need food boxes wouldn't need food boxes if Israel wasn't spending all its money on missiles all the time. Did you ever think of that? Maybe the Israeli government is responsible for its people's own suffering and its discrimination against even Jewish minorities within Israel. Refugees and so forth. Israel doesn't want refugees. They don't give a shit about refugees. Even as there are refugees pouring out of Palestine, trying to get into Egypt, they can't go there because the border's closed. They try to go into Jordan, they can't go there anymore. Jordan's full. There are hundreds of thousands of refugees in a tiny country like Jordan. They can't take anymore. They're living in makeshift camps. They practically live in squalor. There's no place for the Palestinians to go except straight to hell, which is exactly where the IDF is sending them. Not sending them to hell for being sinners, but making life on this planet hell for them. They don't have schools, they don't have hospitals, their roads are full of like craters, their homes are being bombed by the IDF forces. It's madness. This is war crime. This is genocide. What is going on right now in Palestine at the behest of the Zionist government of Israel is genocide. It is the systematic depopulation of a region that the Israeli government wants to settle. And that's all there is to it. It is genocide.